Hello everybody, this is Levi1 back here with another video. So this video is going to be about the GH5 and the noise patterns that I've been seeing here lately. I've been using the GH5 for about, I would say 6 to 8 months here now, and it's a great video camera. ProRes 422, 400 megabits per second, Cinema 4K, it all works fantastically. And the only big gripes that I've had out of the GH5 so far is the color science compared to maybe something like Blackmagic's or even Canon's and the Vlog. Now here I have multiple renditions of the same clip that I've shot in Vlog and Rec 709. So typically you'll either shoot in Vlog or Rec 709. Rec 709 being that you shoot in the reason for you already have that saturation there, and so you don't really have to push the color in post that much. And I thought shooting in Rec 709 would actually benefit the grade and have richer, more deeper colors and shadows. But really, I found that to not be the case. So right here I have, and I did multiple tests of 400 megabits per second in Cinema 4K ProRes 422 10-bit, and also the same thing in 10-bit, but only 150 megabits per second. So right here I have the Rec 709, and then to the right here I have the Vlog. So right here I've color corrected it to the Rec 709 by the eye and using a conversion LUT, and got it the closest as possible to match each other, and I think for the most part they look pretty much exactly the same. So right here you can see if I go to the color tab and then I go to right here, you can see that milky white image. You can see the light brown, the really dark over here, and then the glass and the highlights, and then over here, if I take off the color corrections that I've done so far, you can see what it looks like before any sort of processing to correcting the image. And this is Rec 709. Like I said, this is Vlog right here. So I'll go ahead and undo that. What I've done here is pretty much the Rec 709 I haven't done anything to. And then the Vlog here, I'll go to 400 megabits per second. I just pushed the contrast, the saturation a little bit, messed with the color wheels, brung down the shadows a touch, and yeah. So I'll go ahead and show you the problems that with shooting Rec 709. So I'll start with the biggest problem I have with the GH5, which is its capabilities in low light and having really grainy noise and colorful noise in some points in the shadows. So if I go to we'll start off with 400 megabits per second, and keep in mind there hasn't really been that much of a difference in noise patterns or colorful noise patterns, such as like the pink and the magenta greenish blobs that you find, and like if you try to push 8-bit footage, you'll see those green and magenta blotches in the shadows, especially, or like in skin tones and stuff, and it just won't be pretty. But 400 versus the 150, I haven't really seen much of a difference in terms of equal comparison to 150 shooting Vlog or 150 shooting Rec 709. So right here, now that that's out of the way, I'll just go to the 400 megabits per second Rec 709. If I go here, full size it, you'll see, okay, it's a pretty decent looking image. You have really strong highlights, that sort of wooden grain showing up through here. And then if I zoom in about, so let's say 200%, oh, sorry, let me go to my hand tool. Then we'll go back into this. And I drag over, you don't really see a whole bunch of grain or noise, but maybe if I zoom in 400% over here, you can see this sort of purple and greenish hue blotching everywhere in like the transition from the shadows to the highlights. And even in the dark, you don't really see much. But I go back out. Let's see. If I go to the original Rec 709, this is the no color corrected version that I did. I guess we'll start the comparison off here. So this is 400 megabits per second GH5, all full settings, but shot in Rec 709. So if you go into 200%, because that's the way I've seen it. You can see this like really grainy, blotchy, colorful noise pattern here. And yes, I feel like it is a whole lot smoother in noise pattern in the shadows, but you see that colorful noise pattern there. And then if you go to the vlog, corrected for the Rec 709, the original Rec 709, not color corrected. So this is the 400, 150, 400. We'll go back in, and then you see that you can't really tell much of a splotchy red and magenta, or a magenta and green splotchy. You can't really see it because you're shooting vlog, and I'll tell you why here in a second. So zoom back out, and then I'll just go to the 400 again, and you can see that this is not color corrected or anything. Go back into 200% zoom. So this is the Rec 709 shot, full settings, just so you can see it better. So I'm not sure how the screen capture is coming up. You can see that really purple green blotchiness. Go back out, go to the 400 megabits per second full settings vlog shot, and you don't see that same, you just see the sort of same noise grain pattern, but not the colorful blotches as much because you're shooting vlog. And now what I found, that I found that shooting Rec 709 has already baked that sort of noisy grain colorful pattern in with the green and the magentas. But if you shoot vlog, it doesn't bake that colorful noisy grain pattern in. It just bakes the grain in that the GH5 natively has, that the sensor is limited to. So in that respect, to have a nicer, neater, cleaner blacks, you shoot vlog. And also, this is an added bonus that I found that proved well through this test, was if your lens has chromatic aberration. So say we go back into this this Rec 709 shot, you can see, if you zoom, go to 200%, you see this really strong chromatic aberration. You see these green sort of teal lines up here, and then clashed with that is the purple magenta lines above the high contrast areas. So you see that, and then we go to the vlog shot 1 full settings, and you go to the same thing. You don't see that. You see maybe a touch of green and maybe a touch of purple over here, but ultimately it serves you well to shoot vlog in this respect. Green, purple, and then the vlog one, like, you almost don't see really any green or purple. And that's because when you shoot vlog, it compresses all the colors into a really flat image. So you're recording less colors, yes, in vlog, and you're baking less in, but with that 10-bit, you can bring that image back, and your colors are just going to be so much nicer and so much more even to grade. Because when you try to grade a already Rec 709 image, those colors are already there, and they're stuck in the image. So you can't really grade out chromatic aberration or like those noisy grain colorful patterns in the shadows. Shoot vlog, you won't be working with those. And I can even show you the lumetri scopes over here. So this is the Rec 709 image. You can see that the highlights are off the charts above 255, and then the shadows are pretty much black. With the vlog image, and this is after correcting it to the Rec 709 image, you can see those highlights have a much softer roll off, and that you aren't clipping anywhere. Those whites are within limits, and so are the blacks, really. Go back to the Rec 709 baked in image. There you go. And then, so that's within legal full range of broadcast whatever you want to call it. But and even then, like, you see that these highlights over here, like, this is the Rec 709 image here, and you can see, yes, it's a lot brighter detail over here and stuff, but then you go back to the vlog shot image, and look, it's just a whole lot softer. Now you may want to have those highlights still overexposed, sort of like it was. There's really not that much difference to both images, but just that highlight roll off on vlog after you grade to a Rec 709, it's just so much more even all the way around. So this is the before color corrected and before like bringing it down to contrast. Now this over here is after color correction and after grading. And so you see I corrected the Rec 709 images over here, 400, 150, and then I color corrected and matched to the Rec 709 images over here, and this is the vlog stuff right here. See if I take off the correction, there's vlog, and then here, after I take off those corrections, you can see it was the original Rec 709. Now the same concept applies over here, and what was I going to say about this? It was, I was going to be looking at the noise patterns in and after color correction, because originally I thought my testing would go that if I had color corrected an image, even vlog, and pushed the saturation a little further, or just tweaked with the gain and some sort of colors and the blues and stuff, it would bring those noisy, grainy, purple, green blotches back. But actually the test's shown to have proved to not do that. Like they're not there. So I'll zoom in 200%. And this is the Rec 709 image. You can see a lot of purple greens here. A lot of that is due to chromatic aberration. But in the background, in the shadows, you can see like even in that transition from white to black, that green and purple, magenta stuff is there. But if you go back to the vlog image over here, and you zoom in, that glass almost has no green or purple splotches. Only in areas of superly high contrast areas, like over here, you see it. But like in the rest of the glass, no, you don't see it. And then over here, that purple and green blotchiness is still there. Yes, it's still there. It's still prominent, but like it's either much more blended and evenly distributed to make it not as noticeable, or it's just a whole lot less there. And I think it's a mixture of the two, honestly. So there's that. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is in general color and shooting vlog, especially with the GH5. Now originally I thought that shooting vlog with the GH5 would not be a good idea, because it's only you're only shooting ProRes 422, and yes, there's a whole lot of information that's being recorded there, but you're still getting benefit in just a more uniform broadness of colors. So Rec 709 image before, I'm sorry, this is the Rec 709 image, full settings, after grading and correction, and you see that the highlight roll off is more on the blues, the reds and the greens are a little bit more separated in the midtones, and then the shadows are pretty much, they're roughly the same color. But you can see that the correction job was a little finicky, and just like you see a lot of the reds and the shadows that you just can't really bring into unison with the rest of the colors. If you go to the vlog image, you'll see that it's a whole lot more uniform within just the generality of the compression of color. So like you'll see that this is a heck of a lot more like uniform. The greens, the blues, and the reds all sort of match up on the same, almost like peak at just above 179 here. But then here, which the image looks almost exactly the same, the blues peak, the greens are a little low, and then the reds are the lowest, and you can barely sort of fit them into the same catalog of degree here. But like just with vlog, it's so much more uniform just to get every color within the same sort of white pattern. Like it's just easier to match colors, bring certain colors out, and yes, it's a lot more work, but ultimately I think you get a lot more pleasing image so long as you have good lighting and a good camera that has good dynamic range, such as the GH5. It does exceptionally well. It's not cinema camera by any means, but it will serve you well so long as you shoot vlog and go about correction and grading correctly. Now through this test, I've seen that it's been useful to shoot vlog, and the highlight roll-off is better. The noise patterns in the shadow is less prominent with the greens and purples, so you get less splotching the chromatic aberration. If you have lenses that have strong chromatic aberration, like this, I shot with the this right here. I shot with the Panasonic 42.517, which has a pretty strong chromatic aberration in like high contrasty areas. But to my tests have shown truthful, that goes away with Vlog, or at least some point, and colors can sort of be compressed in their own palette, and then you'll just have a more even balanced image to work with in post when you're going to color correct and grade. So that is my spiel. I hope I didn't go on too long, but I was just a little excited about this test and wanted to share the information, because originally I thought before that shooting Rec 709 with already baked in color, even shooting 10-bit in ProRes 422, would be more beneficial and get a richer grade. But it shows truthful that if you shoot Vlog and you just have good lighting, and you'll get a better compression of colors. Everything will be a lot more uniform. Exposure, even the highlight roll off, will be a whole lot better. And just in general, colors will just be way more uniform. Exposure, way more uniform. Highlight roll off better. Shadows, the transition from shadows to highlights, such as like you see right here, will be a whole lot more smoother. And it'll just be a whole lot easier to correct and grade. But that is my spiel. I hope you guys got something out of this, and if I can help anybody with anything GH5 related, GH5S related, I would be more than happy to do so with my experience that I've gotten so far using the camera. And but if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe if you will. And I might do more of these sort of epiphanies that I find as I go along. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.